Well, guys, it happened. The developers of Bloodhunt have announced that they will no longer be actively developing the game due to the lack of players and unable to sustain development. However, they did mention the game servers will remain operational and available to play as long as there's an active player base and community. Although, to keep the game interesting, the developers will introduce an in-game player voting system to unlock new content and keep things fresh, apparently. The last planned update will be released pretty soon here, after which the patches will only be like related to maintenance and stuff. The real currency purchases will be disabled on September 26th. But players will have an easier way to earn in-game tokens to continue playing and unlocking cosmetics later down the line. The developers acknowledge their sadness surrounding the end of Bloodhunt's development, but assure the community that they will learn from this experience for future game development as well. That's pretty much the summary of what they mentioned in their posts. But yeah, personal thoughts. It's kind of no surprise to me that this happened. In fact, I recently was talking about how much the development in general has been slow and they only have a skeleton crew managing it for a while now. The pool of content they had, well, it dried up already and they have nothing left. Now let's talk about this further. How did this happen in the first place? How did the game not get the success it possibly deserved? I want to take you back to memory lane a little bit if you have been there, and if not, well, maybe you'll learn something. So in 2021, during the Gamescom opening night live, they world premiered their gameplay trailer of Bloodhunt during that time. They were stating that after a successful alpha period, they are ready for early access on September 7th during that year. The public reception at the time was kinda They were saying, while kinda looking neat, there were a lot of comments saying it looks like another shovelware third-person shooter with abilities in a generic-looking city, which I can't blame them for that. Not to mention, for the Vampire Masquerade fans, this was kind of a low blow, as Bloodlines 2 was actually indefinitely postponed that year as well. Seeing that IP being used for a battle royale was kind of a spit in the face, not gonna lie. I was never a massive fan of Vampire the Masquerade, but even I can easily see how this might be really insulting seeing that happen. Personal opinion, I don't think they should have ever used the Vampire Masquerade's IP in the first place for this game, as it doesn't bring anything noteworthy to the table. Like what, lore, maybe archetypes and the clans? They could have just made something up and left that IP alone, because at the end, all that they brought to the table was angry fans. So they already made one bad move and it was just the beginning. So early access launches, and more or less everyone's having fun during the first month, kinda. But oh shit, during the first week or so of the game, the anti-cheat keeps running in the background while exiting the game, and a few files of the game remain on your hard drive, even when uninstalling the game. Not to mention the crap ton of cheaters flooding in. Because of this, the community went absolutely apeshit about it, stating that the game comes with Chinese spyware because Shark Mob is owned by Tencent, a Chinese mega corporation, pretty much. While the spyware thing wasn't really true, I remember this period being quite funny, as the same people saying about this Chinese spyware stuff being installed and them like really hating Tencent, they're also the people casually playing League of Legends and Valorant, which is owned by Tencent. But yeah, that was kind of wild. Because of that, I remember the player base dropping like a rock. The Steam reviews were pretty much bombed because of this rumor. But afterwards, the player numbers kind of flattened out. It stayed kind of stable, but it was fairly low. Although there wasn't much to do even for the player base that stayed and really enjoyed the game, as people got bored because you pretty much completed the battle pass and there was nothing really else to do. While also being annoyed that the performance was rather terrible. You needed a pretty good machine to actually run the game at even like normal graphics. Eventually, the player base was so low that the queuing times were affected by a lot. I remember personally queuing for like 8 to 10 minutes, maybe even longer, to get a single match in, which was crazy. A few weeks after, they decided to pull the plug on the early access fiasco they were having, and they decided to come back another time. And trying to come back, they did. They did a short beta test of the game in around March of 2022, which had quite a few bugs along the way. And with the beta, they did a bunch of changes. They slowed down the game quite a lot. They changed how the weapons are and how they feel, I believe. And the characters and their abilities were touched a lot. Everything all around was just slower, kind of more boring, more underwhelming in my experience. After this short beta test, they decided to fully release the game on April 27th of 2022. They had an anti-cheat strapped on, a ranked mode added, and a solo mode was added as well. They added in-game player reporting, some gamepad improvements, including actually adding aim assist, archetype progression, crossplay between PS5 and PC, which was huge, and a new archetype called Enforcer. While the reception for this game was okay, there were a lot of bugs in the game that didn't exist even in the early beta and alphas, and they all showed up on release pretty much. Yeah, more about that slightly later. The console experience was really hated. Not only is the game not on Xbox, but the PS5 experience was really laughable. The players wanted more options with their gamepad to really finally adjust and tune their aiming, as they were competing against PC players and just getting absolutely wrecked. They had a short-term and a long-term plan for improvements in the works, but that took so long for them to implement that it was pretty bad. What was really funny is the crossplay even existing at all, because okay, yeah, you can queue and then you'll play against console players, but people wanted to play with their friends across platforms, which you could not invite between one platform and another. So the only thing they could do is hope that when they're queuing, they'll be placed together, I guess, which never happened. The devs investigated the feasibility of implementing crossplay group play. However, they mentioned that there were complexities involved, as they said. To cut to the chase, they never implemented this. They didn't even bother, which was perplexing. The bugs and issues that showed up on release were pretty game-breaking. There was a huge hit registration issue at the time. It was extremely frustrating to have your shots not do any damage, which the devs shortly did release a hotfix. However, the hotfix introduced another bug on top of that, where the weapons sometimes don't even reload properly. So you're in this infinite reloading animation, and you just always have 0 bullets. Can you believe that? And yeah, you were just pretty much screwed. They mentioned on their blog that this was a less common issue, so it's on their list of fixes, but it took them so long to fix it, man. That was a joke, dude. This issue was happening every single match for me, for example. Oh, and by the way, they fixed this issue 3 months later. Holy shit. Also, during this time, cheating was flooding in quite rapidly, making it very frustrating for gamers at the time. And while only some bans did happen during the beginning, it took about a month or so at least starting to see some results and seeing more bans happening. But it was a constant battle. The player base pretty much crumbled right here and never really recovered from the numbers it had right on release. So honestly, anything further ahead is not even as important as all the mistakes they did right here before, so I won't mention it too much here. But I would like to mention, during their biggest update they've done, which is the Scholar update, they released a new archetype, Scholar, a bunch of new improvements, and a weapon range. It did start increasing players a little bit from this update, but as always, the devs shoot themselves in the foot, as the game had been plagued with horrible server issues. There was stutters, server rollbacks, or even straight up just full crashes of the server.
What? Okay, yeah, that... Holy shit.
The servers were completely unstable, the tick rates were all over the place, and it was just a terrible time. The update itself was really great, but it got so overshadowed by these server issues to the point where I had multiple friends try out the game for the first time during this update to only uninstall it because of these server issues. I can only imagine how many potential players they lost because of this issue. It took them literally 2 months to get the servers in check. As I'm speaking, this issue has been more or less fixed like a week or 2 ago at best. And there's still issues sometimes here and there. So now that you got all of this information in your head, you can kind of see why it failed. They bid way too much than they could chew, and they weren't ready for it. Using the Vampire Masquerade IP for a BR game, the rumors of the anti-cheat being spyware, giving the game really bad PR from the get-go, to not being able to resolve fixes fast enough or straight up ignoring long-lasting issues, half-assing the crossplay system with no direct way to play with friends from different platforms, the console experience being ruined early on release with lack of further control options, cheating being rampant and taking a long while to get it under control, and just constantly shooting themselves in the foot when delivering good content to the game, which in result pushes any new players back and infuriated the hardcore players for the most part. In the end, the player base was mostly the long-lasting hardcore audience that were there since the beginning, more or less. I've never seen a dev team shoot themselves in the foot so many times as Shark Mob. to the point where I'm thinking of if this game even had a chance in the first place. I may be sounding harsh right now, but this is not coming from a place of hate. I actually really enjoyed the game. I really wanted it to prosper. It's very unique in many ways. It had a skill ceiling, which a lot of games don't nowadays. But it gets really upsetting how the game keeps getting worse and worse and it's slowly dying. And then you're wondering, like, how the hell was the alpha and beta better than the current state of the game? How is that possible? What did you do? Your game was better early stages of the game and more stable. I think they should have really put in some more love into this game and gave it more time to shine in the first place and been really careful with their testing, because it really seemed like it wasn't. This could have been a beast of a game, but unfortunately it lost its fight for popularity and lost too much blood. Thanks for watching.